I have a dream. We've all heard these words, and they're synonymous with greatness and power. But they're just words. We know who spoke them, but we can only understand these words by understanding not where the words came from, but where the man who said the words came from. Martin Luther King Jr. was a courageous man. He inspired a nation and its people to just action and civic reform. Within this speech, I'd like to share with you the story of this man that led to one of the most widely used and widely recognized and widely understood quotes. Martin Luther King was born in line to become a great man. His upbringing seems to provide signs of this to come. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929 as Michael Luther King Jr. His father served as a pastor, one in the long lines of pastors of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. He served as a co-pastor in the same church from 1960 until his death. He graduated from a segregated high school in Georgia at the age of 14, actually. King received a BA degree in 1948 from Morehouse College, the same college that both his grandfather and his father graduated from. He studied at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, where he was elected president of a predominantly white senior class. In 1954, Martin Luther King Jr. accepted the pastoral of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. He also became a member of the executive committee of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, in 1954. His path became clear when he was 14 years old, when he was actually given a speech assignment by a teacher. His subject was the Negro and the Constitution, discussing, of course, the integration of the two, and, of course, the integration of the nation's people as well. On the bus ride home, King and his teacher were confronted with the same inequality and injustice that he had spoke about earlier. He and his teacher were forced to give up his seats to some white passengers. This night formed within him, according to Claiborne Carson, a writer of the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., it formed within him an aberration of not only segregation, but also the oppressive and barbarous acts that come from it. During the terrible years that followed, incidents like this one, combined with his very congenial upbringing and being raised within the church and within a loving family, this prompted and led Martin Luther King Jr. to lead protests and give speeches and rallies just like this, just like the I Have a Dream speech, that would change the minds and the actions of a nation. Each of his speeches informed and persuaded all of those who listened to change the civil code and the law of the nation and its people. King began speaking as a preacher, which put him in touch with all of the black people around him and gave him a base within the church, which ultimately led to branching out and speaking in many different situations. In his most famous speech, of course, the I Have a Dream speech, he speaks to the injustice and inequality that segregation pours into the societies of our nation and what our nation could be and how it must be changed then and forever. It's from this speech especially, along with all the other rallies, protests, and demonstrations, that King created the equal rights movement and inspired a nation toward equality. Martin Luther King Jr. inspired the nation, the world, and left behind, of course, a legacy of greatness, courage, and lasting reform. According to Jack White, each of his public stands earned him retaliation. His home in Montgomery, Alabama was bombed several times with his wife and children inside. He received hundreds of death threats. The FBI even bugged his phones in his hotel rooms and tried to convince him to commit suicide, actually, at one point. The defining moment of King's life came from a phone threat that he received. In the early days of the Alabama bus boycott, he received a threatening phone call at midnight. Callers stated that they were tired of the mess that he was causing and they were going to blow up his house in 3 days if he didn't leave town. This threat defined his character and really created the man that we know today. He knew he had to remember his father's words and remain steadfast in his resolve and his purpose. And those words were, "I don't care how long I have to live with this system, I will never accept it." So as you can see, he got his spirit and his drive from his father. Martin Luther King had a dream and put it eloquently into words that would change the face of a nation. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This speech called for action then and as well as now. Though much change has occurred since then, many strides have been taken to right the wrongs of segregation and inequality. There are also still signs of racism and prejudice today. Though Martin Luther King died on April 4th, 1968, he changed the nation, and we must continue King's work and make sure that injustice does not occur today. The dream can and must be made to endure, such as the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. We all, regardless of our station or our status or our race or our skin color, we must keep watch over his lasting mark that he's left on all of us and make sure it remains in the consciousness of our leaders, our workers, and our friends and our enemies. Though Martin Luther King Jr. came from a supportive, well-off, loving family, and he still faced social injustices that were felt down to the very core of his humanity. This, coupled with the lasting memory when he was a boy and the feelings of his father, cultivated within King a fire that only social activism could help to subdue. His actions demanded social change, and many advances have come to pass since his assassination, though there are still some signs of racism in part of the nation still today. And that is why we must all take up his cause and make sure that his legacy remains intact and as powerful as ever. Thank you.